England have qualified for the FIFA 2026 World Cup and were the first European nation to do so, but it just feels a bit anticlimactic. In fact, those are the exact words that one of my mates messaged me after England qualified, and we all remember the days when, even though England have historically qualified for the World Cup in particular really well, it doesn't mean that throughout my lifetime, most group phases of the qualification campaign have been much more challenging than what we've become accustomed to as England fans. You look at England's group and everyone said right at the start that this is going to be an easy victory, we're going to walk the group, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, this is the sort of group that throughout the years would have given England a challenge, and arguably if other teams are in this group, they may not have won this group as convincingly as England are doing now. But because of the calibre of the teams that we are playing, there is that little bit of a bittersweet feeling because we've qualified, but we don't seem to have any idea in terms of what this England team is actually capable of. We don't seem to have learnt anything. I mean, it all rings a bit of like, we've qualified, but so what? And that is the message for Thomas Tuchel, because the so what for Thomas Tuchel is, right, what are you going to do at the World Cup? He wasn't brought in, was he, to qualify England for the World Cup. He was hired to win the World Cup for England, and it just remains to be seen, and it almost feels like this could be a long process where we're waiting just for Thomas Tuchel to be judged, and this England squad actually, to be judged on one game at the knockout phase of the World Cup, and it just seems a bit like we're just holding our breath constantly, and it just feels like we're going through the motions until we finally meet a team that we think should be challenging England or could challenge us, probably most likely now in the knockout stages of the World Cup itself. But then obviously you hear these England fans that, rightly so, are getting excited. England are playing well despite the opposition that we're playing. We're still playing incredibly well. We look like we've found a nice balance within the team. Tuchel finally seems to have settled in. You get your usual England fans saying it's coming home after a handful of victories, and you can start to feel that confidence building. The World Cup, even though it's a long time away, doesn't feel like it's that distant away where you start to think actually you can start to put the names on the plane moving into next summer. But it just feels a little bit like we've qualified at a breeze, really. It leaves the feeling of the World Cup a little bit different. England haven't had to in any way struggle or battle for their place at a tournament, and it is a sign of where England have progressed to, because as I started this video with, 10, 20, 30 years ago, this wasn't the case. In fact, it was in 1994 when the World Cup was last hosted by America where England just didn't qualify, and that is the last time that England failed to qualify for a World Cup. But that is completely unthinkable now in terms of where England are at, so you have to see that period of time since the early 90s until now where England have stepped on, and we've done that over a gradual period and seem to take a huge leap under Gareth Southgate, where I believe we do genuinely take World Cup qualification for granted. You then can't deny the lack of quality that England have faced. So I think this feeling that England fans have at the moment in terms of it's a bit of a weird, odd, numb feeling to England qualifying at a World Cup. You'll not see huge celebrations. It's almost a bit of, I mean, it passed over last night and nobody cared really. It was just like, yeah, of course we're there. But when you look at this that's getting posted online, where you see the potential squad depth that Thomas Tuchel has available to him at the World Cup next summer, and you can't help but yet again get excited, get really ambitious about England's prospect of potentially going to the US this time and winning the thing. But there's always, until that knockout game at the World Cup, there is always that asterisk against any sort of ambition that I, even myself, will have as an England fan going into the World Cup. We're going to be in a situation where we've had a manager in charge for a year and a half, and we will not know going into that quarter-final or semi-final game, if England get there at the World Cup, we will not know how capable this manager and indeed this crop of players are against better opposition, and that is the problem, and that I feel is sort of putting a bit of a downer on it. You know, we need to give ourselves a bit of context here. Qualifying for a World Cup, particularly even from Europe, even with the expanded format, is a very difficult thing to do. But I suppose the what now for England is, how can we continue this momentum even if we continue to play poor opposition? I mean, Serbia and Albania, at least we're ending with the two strongest teams of the group, but we really want to see something against some better opposition now, and there's talks of who those opposition teams may be in March in those friendlies and what may be some friendlies leading up to the tournament. But it's vital England start to test themselves really against much stronger opposition, and we can only do that now with friendlies in mind. The World Cup draw is obviously something we've got to be really excited for, but again, I think most people are expecting, regardless of the draw, England to qualify from that group. Look, it's fantastic. England qualifying, potentially go in the group, winning every single game without conceding conceding a goal would be a great achievement in Europe, regardless, absolutely regardless of who we've got within our World Cup qualification campaign. It would be a great achievement because throughout the years, there's been other teams, other top nations who have had groups similar in quality to England's and haven't done that. So if England were to do that, it would still be an absolutely brilliant qualification campaign. The problem is the qualification campaign, or indeed anyone England's playing right up until that vital game at the World Cup, has no impact. We have no judgment in regards to where England are at. And I think that is why this qualification to the World Cup feels a little bit flat, is probably the best way for me to put it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Look, don't get me wrong, I myself last night was absolutely ecstatic, and I think why I've made this video is because it clearly wasn't coming through from everybody else. It literally passed by, didn't it, last night? You could almost have missed it. But England are the first European nation there. It means we can finally now officially look forward to it. It does give Tuchel now an opportunity to experiment with those final 2 games, which maybe gives a little bit more of an interesting dynamic to those fixtures. I am going to end with putting this squad depth on there, and no matter who you are, no matter what you say, I know a lot of people slate England fans for getting carried away, but ultimately we are going there most definitely as a team that should be in with a shout of competing for this title. And when you look at that squad, you cannot blame England fans for getting carried away and thinking that possibly next summer it could finally be coming home. Thank you all so much for watching. Hit the comment section, join in the debate, and I will see you all on my next video.